Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Happy Friday. Let me get into it here. First of all, basically, a couple of geopolitical things here and just kind of food for thought and something to remember, which, of course, is basically a reoccurring pattern that happens with regularity where the President of the United States, Donald Trump, will redirect people's attention to particular issues, and he does it, of course, I believe, and certainly many others do, on purpose. That when a particular subject gets brought up, looking at it at face value is important. However, understanding that there's always more going on behind the scenes is something that people have to consistently remember. Again, in the last episode, I was rightfully critical about the H-1B visa stuff, specifically, again, when it came to foreign college students. That's the face value analysis of it, again, just looking at it plainly. However, what he was also highlighting, and I believe anyway, was the failure of colleges and universities. He was again saying that less people are going to college because they don't, of course, view it as being necessary. It's not a good financial decision unless a person has a full-blown scholarship and they're assured that they're not going to have debt by the time they leave. And even, of course, unfortunately, if they leave and they leave with a particular degree, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Certainly, again, that depends on the kind of degree in which a person receives and their course of study, so to speak. But even so, in that interview with Laura Ingraham, he was highlighting again the failure of colleges and universities. He openly said again, if they weren't financially stimulated in some way, then they would collapse. Now, again, I don't have a problem with them collapsing. But the interesting part, too, is that the vast majority of those colleges and universities that employ a great deal of people, in many cases in the counties where those colleges and universities exist, certainly the larger ones, they are usually the largest employer of individuals within said county. Now, unfortunately, the way that those universities are structured is that the individuals at the top, so to speak, would not be the ones who would take a pay cut, and they are not the ones who would resign. They would meet with all of the individuals, again, at the lower level, for example, the maintenance level, while also seeking, of course, to get rid of courses of study and cut college professors and even, again, full-blown departments, which doesn't bother me in the slightest. And at the exact same time, they would go through, again, the maintenance crew and things of that nature, and the engineers and the people who maintain the university as a whole, and unfortunately, they would start to cut them too. Instead of course, cutting their own administration, which means in the long run, if you had a university that was not fiscally responsible, was losing enrollment, was losing money, and then cutting programs and cutting staff, ultimately, who exactly would you be left with? You would be left with brick and mortar buildings and administration who couldn't cut the grass. They couldn't clean anything. They couldn't maintain anything. They couldn't fix something if something broke because half of these people can't screw in a light bulb. So again, I understand the need to sort of financially stimulate these environments, but if the people teaching there don't change, and the product doesn't change, and the result doesn't change, and of course the customer doesn't increase or even become, again, more conservative, then what do you have? And I think that the President of the United States knows that. I think that he knows that these colleges and universities, and it's practically all of them, are bastions for communism. They always have been. They've just gotten worse with time. And you have endless, of course, alternatives. You have online alternatives. There's Grand Canyon University, Liberty University, some of these other universities, again, that are more conservative-minded, certainly at face value. But I would just say again that there's always more to what meets the eye. And again, in certain cases, if there isn't, and we're being told at face value what happens to be the very thing that is actually happening, well, then if that result is either kicking the can down the road and not really improving anything in the long run, then yeah, that's not going to be beneficial to anybody. Because again, we can't keep throwing money at the problem. Certainly not the problem of so-called education, which isn't education. It's indoctrination, brainwashing, and teaching individuals to hate themselves, hate their country, cut their own cocks off, and then before you know it, they're on drugs and, they throw themselves off a bridge. I mean, that's really the whole mentality right there in a nutshell. So if that doesn't change, then yeah, we have a problem. And throwing, Chinese money at it for short-term financial, I don't know, stability, I guess, so to speak, I don't think is a smart idea either. But I'm not claiming to know the whole picture, and I certainly wouldn't do that. Let me give you another example. Earlier this week, of course, you had this 50-year mortgage debate that popped up. Somebody leaked that was once a discussion, or a discussion that is taking place, that a 50-year mortgage, of course, would allow banks to loan more money to more wannabe homeowners. And then, of course, a 50-year mortgage would, at least as far as the homeowner thinks, is that it would drop the monthly cost of owning a home, thereby increasing the likelihood of owning a home. Now, you, of course, can pay off your mortgage faster by basically paying as much as you'd like on top of the current mortgage payment. And anybody can work those calculations based on an interest rate, and then before you know it, you can end up paying off your house certainly sooner. But again, that's risky, because it also means that individuals are going to be turning over their homes rather quickly, which again, you can make a great deal of money on that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And then, of course, you can purchase a home potentially a little bit faster if you live in a home for X amount of years, and then you flip it in a better market, a better housing market, and then you walk away with more money, thereby allowing you to have a larger down payment for another home. Therefore, you could potentially pay off a new home, or a second or a third home, of course, that you've moved into at a faster rate in a shorter amount of time. I think that's part of that idea, but then again, people don't like banks. And again, suggesting a 50-year mortgage, that's sort of the face value again argument, is people say, I don't want to owe more money, again, even at potentially a lower interest rate, to a bank. I don't want to be a slave to a bank for 50 years. I get it. I fully understand that. But again, throwing that into the so-called zeitgeist of the populace certainly gets a conversation going as to whether or not this actually makes any sense. And then, of course, there was this, which had to do with a letter that was sent by Donald Trump to the president of the state of Israel. And I want to read this, even though it's not dated, which is interesting that there's no date on this. But it's certainly, again, I would think you would normally date a letter. But there are people, again, looking at this at face value and saying, again, he's Zion Don, he's bending the knee, he's blackmailed by Israel, and he's trying to get Netanyahu out of trouble by, again, suggesting a particular pardon for Netanyahu. Well, what's interesting, of course, is that you can't pardon somebody unless they've been convicted of something. And he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. Now, we all know that Benjamin Netanyahu is guilty of endless war crimes. From here to Timbuktu, across endless decades, we're well aware of that. He has politicians in Israel who are calling him out to his face all of the time. I played an audio clip and a video clip of it in the last war video. But I want to read this letter, and then I want to read someone's take on this, because, again, there's a little more to this, and there's a little catch, I believe, inside of this particular letter, which opens up the door again to Netanyahu losing any protection that he thinks he has. Certainly, again, if a pardon were to end up taking place after a conviction, because then that would mean he can't serve in any elected capacity ever again, and he's not protected by any international agency whatsoever or country, thereby basically meaning that he can be tried by anybody anywhere at any time, and no president can pardon him ever again after such a thing takes place. So here's what it says. Again, from the White House, Washington, His Excellency Isaac Herzog, President of the State of Israel, Jerusalem. Dear Mr. President, it's my honor to write to you at this historic time, as we have together just secured peace that has been sought for at least 3,000 years. I hereby thank you. Again, the simple fact that he has that is hilarious. Basically, we've been at war and you've been at war for 3,000 years. But why would it be your problem? Again, it's quite The first line alone is an admission of guilt in war crimes, that they've been at war for 3,000 years. Well, why is that? It goes on, it says, I hereby thank you and all Israelis again for your gracious and warm hospitality, and I'm addressing a key topic of my speech at the Knesset. As the great state of Israel and the amazing Jewish people move past the terribly difficult times of the last 3 years, I hereby call on you to fully pardon Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been a formidable and decisive wartime prime minister and is now leading Israel into a time of peace, which includes my continued work with key Middle East leaders to add many additional countries to the world-changing Abraham Accords. Prime Minister Netanyahu has stood tall for Israel in the face of strong adversaries and long odds, and his attention cannot be unnecessarily diverted. While I absolutely respect the independence of the Israeli justice system and its requirements, I believe that this case, quote-unquote, against Bibi, who has fought alongside me for a long time, including against the very tough adversary of Israel, Iran, is a political, unjustified prosecution, rather. He said, Isaac, we have established a great relationship, one that I am very thankful for and honored by, and we agreed as soon as I was inaugurated in January that the focus had to be centered on finally bringing the hostages home and getting the peace agreement done. Now that we have achieved these unprecedented successes and are keeping Hamas in check, it is time to let Bibi unite Israel by pardoning him and ending the lawfare once and for all. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Again, it's not dated, so I don't know exactly when this was sent. I have really no reason to believe it's fake. Either way, it's interesting, and here's another person's take on this. Well, let me mention this first. This kind of matters. It's obvious what, again, Netanyahu has done. It's very obvious. In fact, let me play this quick little piece of audio before I go into the analysis that this individual has of that particular letter, because I think it's interesting. There's an individual here following Netanyahu up a flight of stairs, and I assume this is rather recent, and he's video recording it. You'll be able to see this, of course, on my socials, because I already put it out there, but I'll also put it in the next war video as well. He's walking next to him, and he asks him what book he's reading. And then he says what book he's reading, who wrote it, and then what it's about. And then listen to what he says at the very end as well. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
We want to know what you're reading now.
What I'm reading?
Yeah.
It's a book by a historian by the name of Barry Strauss. It's called The Jews Against Rome. Jews Against Rome.
What made you pick it up?
Well, we lost that one. I think we have to win the next one.
Well, we lost that one, and I think we have to win the next one. Or we have to win the next one. The book he's referencing is titled The Jews versus Rome, How a Small Nation Defeated a Great Empire, written by Barry Strauss of Simon & Schuster, of course, every single time, November 12th, 2024. 336 pages, also in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. History, ancient history, military history. Here's the summary of the book. The Jews versus Rome chronicles the First Jewish-Roman War, 63 through 73 CE, focusing on the dramatic Jewish revolt against the Roman Empire. Strauss argues that this war was not just a doomed rebellion, but a sophisticated insurgency where a small, divided nation of about 2 to 3 million Jews challenged the world's superpower, population 60 million, with a professional army. Again, he goes through particular elements apparently during that time. He then says that Strauss frames the war as a David versus Goliath clash, where Jews used guerrilla tactics, zealotry, assassins, and terrain advantages, while Romans relied on siege engineering, discipline, and logistics. He substantiates that Jewish victory, quote-unquote, claim through long-term impacts Rome's Pyrrhic win drained resources, contributed to the Flavian dynasty's rise, and sowed seeds for future revolts. Again, I'm not a historian, but I know this, that he openly said again, we lost that one, but we of course need to win the next one. He's telling everybody that he hates white people. He's telling everybody that a Western civilization, which of course is our government and our way of life, based on ancient Rome here in America, that has to be destroyed. It would be very odd that Donald Trump would not know that. It'd be very odd that our own military wouldn't know that. It would be very odd that oath-taking individuals in our country who love the Constitution would not know that someone like Benjamin Netanyahu would believe that. And then, of course, to openly admit it. Well, he openly admits a lot of horrible things because he's a criminal, like most criminals. They talk all the time without even thinking, because there's no inner monologue. They will just tell you what they believe. They will tell you who they want to destroy. So let me read again this individual's breakdown of that letter that Donald Trump sent, because they have a particular take. They said, Trump's pardon trap. This is from a Laura, Oboli official, at Laura Oboli _X on X. And here's what they said. Everyone's reading this letter as a gesture of support for Netanyahu. Trump urging President Herzog to pardon him, calling him a formidable wartime prime minister, quote unquote. But what if that's not the real play? A pardon sounds merciful on the surface, but legally it implies guilt. Once pardoned, Netanyahu would no longer have an ongoing case and therefore no procedural immunity. In Israel's system, that could actually disqualify him from holding office or even strip him of diplomatic protection. If Trump knows this, and of course he does, then this might not be a gesture of friendship. It could be a trap disguised as support. A pardon closes the case, but it also removes the shield. Once that happens, Bibi stands as a private citizen, not a sitting prime minister, and a private citizen can be expelled, investigated, or even extradited if the winds shift. Trump's phrasing is telling, quote, now that we have achieved these unprecedented successes, it is time to let Bibi unite Israel by pardoning him, unquote. Keep in mind, and this is my digression here, that the vast majority of Israel doesn't like Netanyahu. They see the murder for what it is. It's upwards of 64-65% of the population doesn't like him. It goes on, it says, that sounds less like protection and more like closure. Remove the political martyrdom card, end the narrative of persecution, and quietly move Israel into a new phase of leadership under the Abraham Accords framework. In other words, appear to support your ally while removing the final chess piece that keeps the old guard in place. Trump has done this before. He often praises those he intends to neutralize, using their own narratives to expose them. It's the same pattern again and again. Mercy on the surface, justice underneath. This is the art of war, unquote. Again, I tend to agree with that. I'm not agreeing with it because it's somebody I don't know who happens to be supporting Donald Trump and XYZ. That's not it. I just know what the art of war is. I practically have it memorized, and that is certainly it. You mention your enemies in a favorable light, thereby drawing them in. You draw them in, you get what you want from them, and then you cut them off. Or you have someone else cut them off, and then you stand there with your shoulders shrugged like, well, wasn't us. It looked like it was them, and it's their problem, and that's their fight, and that's their business. Anyway, on to the next subject, and then you just move on. I have a feeling that that's happening in many cases with many different subjects. But again, who's to say one way or another? Time will certainly tell on all of this, but again, people have to sort of, I think anyway, there's nothing wrong with looking at things at face value, but it's government. It's psychological operations all over the place. It's military warfare. There's always more things going on than, of course, what meets the eye. That's basically my take. Again, the government's reopened. Endless people have lost their jobs, which is good. Individuals who run these departments have gone through those departments during this time, and of course, they were going through it with Doge beforehand. Many individuals, again, had completely useless positions. Absolutely useless positions. And I've even read some posts online before, and certainly on the show, of individuals openly testifying that some of the jobs that they have, whether they be in government or business or what have you, that the job that they personally have is a useless job. That they go to work every single day, they look around, and they see again that the job that they have is a job that does not need to exist. That's part of what was going on again with this government shutdown, which a lot of people are not discussing. They're claiming that it's all about health care. It's got nothing to do with health care. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And then, of course, as soon as the government reopens as a nice distraction, they start talking about Epstein files again, which again, that blows up right in the Democrats' face once again. They just keep bringing it up. It's just an old penny that keeps turning up that doesn't produce anything. They're going to beg for it one time, and then something's going to happen, and it's going to expose all of the wrong people. Again, these people are not smart. Like it says in Q drops, these people are stupid. They just don't shut up. They just keep talking. They keep perpetuating their own lies, actually believing that people are going to continuously believe them instead of actually being exposed to the truth eventually. The truth always comes out. Always. And you can only lie so often. And then, of course, remembering your lies is next to impossible, which is the perfect time to strike and the perfect time to catch these individuals. So, yeah. But government's back open again, albeit a whole lot smaller. And it appears that these $2,000 checks, again, are going to be coming out to individuals. I'm not sure when, but it is official that that will apparently happen on at least one occasion. And again, a lot of people were whining about that too, and saying things like, well, hey, look, we've been spending more on products since the tariffs went into place, so theoretically we've already lost $2,000 as a result of the tariffs, so we're basically just getting our money back. Well, what's the complaint there then? You're getting your money back. Isn't that a good thing? What's bad about that? If prices increased for a little bit of time, and everybody paid a little bit more as a result of prices increasing, and you're getting money back that was yours to begin with before the tariffs went into place or while the tariffs were in place, I don't see the downside. Everybody can use a $2,000 check. People can pay off debt. People can use it again for a holiday season or after the holiday season to pay off debt. They can do lots of things. They can invest it, gold, silver. There's lots of ways that they can use that money to their advantage because after all, it's theirs anyway. So, yeah, what are you going to do? Receive a check and then tear it in half? No one's going to do that. So I just don't understand the complaining about it. I mean, it's $2,000. I can use it. You can use it. Everybody can use it. Again, the face value stuff and the blackpilling and the constant we're constantly being taken over and this, that, and the other. I'm not saying that weird things aren't happening from time to time, but if everybody takes everything at face value all of the time, it again becomes one of those, well then why are you still around? Throw yourself off a cliff kind of thing. I think there's a lot of good things continuing to happen here. But again, there's a lot of bureaucracy that still has to, of course, be exposed. Take Jim Comey, for example. You just had a couple of prosecutors who, again, were working in the Florida prosecutor's office, state prosecutor's office, or federal prosecutor's office at the state level, and they were openly saying, again, that they were being asked to do things that they don't want to do, so they just up and quit, having to do with James Comey's criminal case right now. Well, that just exposed them. It's not that they were being asked to do anything unethical. It's that they were being asked, again, to retrieve documents, look for documents, and then report those documents to their superiors. And they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do their job anymore. Why? Because they're Democrats. So in quitting, they just exposed that they don't want to participate in the prosecution of a former FBI agent. Why? Is it because he's innocent of anything? No. They might think he is. They might think this is just some political game. Politics has nothing to do with this. This is called accountability. It's the difference between right and wrong. It's the old no one's above the law line. And these, again, I mean, if you're going to set up an opportunity, which is the art of war, if you're going to set up the opportunity for the swamp to drain itself, why would you not do that? Why would you not allow that to happen? Corrupt prosecutors want to leave the office and jump ship because you're asking them to do their job and they don't want to do it because it happens to be against a guy who's more crooked than a bag of shit. Well, then great. Adios. Then what you do is you retrieve all of those prosecutors' emails and their communications. You confiscate their cell phones. You go through them with a fine-tooth comb. What else are you going to find then? These people, again, they're dumb. They expose themselves all the time in all of these investigations. It's incredible. Now I want to shift gears here because, again, that's always an ongoing thing, but eventually I think these people are going to be caught. I don't think that that's just some kind of a distraction show. I think it has to be airtight. They already have subpoenas again for Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, John Brennan, all of that stuff. It's going to get worse for them. Just look at their behavior. Certainly John Brennan's. I've played his in war videos and on social media. I mean, he's in deep shit. But let me move on to education because this is fascinating. I put this post that was on X on my social media the other day. And I came across it and I read it and I thought to myself, yep, this is perfect. This right here should prove to everybody that the Matrix is real and that when it comes to the schooling system in America, there are individuals, particular youth specifically, who can see through the Matrix and understand again that it is not for them and that they want basically nothing to do with it. And they live outside of it, and they learn outside of it, and they operate outside of it. And then once they decide to plug back in and go into the Matrix even for a moment, they say, you know what, I want nothing to do with this. And I'm going to elaborate on this post because, again, it proves endless things that are 100% true that I've brought up here on the show for 5 years now. This was from a Wendy at TeachThemX3 on X. Again, I have no reason to believe this is false, but you can take it with a grain of salt if you'd like. It says the following, quote, I had a new student in my Algebra 2 class. She was homeschooled previously, and this was her first experience in public school. 2 days in, she's already unenrolling. I'm not surprised, given our last conversation. Her words when I asked her what she thought, quote, I wanted to see what all the hype was and maybe go to prom, but this isn't for me. Most of class is spent waiting for everyone to open their Chromebooks or figure out what to do after the teacher has literally said it 5 times. And I can't use the bathrooms because of all of the vaping, unquote. They wrapped up and said, I knew it wasn't going to work when she brought back an entire unit packet meant to be completed over 2 weeks the next day. And no, she didn't use AI. I asked her a few questions and she could explain the most difficult concepts verbally. She even offered her advice on how the sequencing of the packet could be improved, unquote. You had a homeschooling student, Algebra 2, which is theoretically a junior in high school. Basically a junior in high school, unless, of course, they're a little more advanced, which clearly they are. And then they decided to go to public school, again, having been homeschooled their whole life. And they went to public school for a short amount of time, a few days or whatever, a couple of months, as an experiment. And then looked around and went, no thanks. And I'm sure she was being polite. She was being polite when she said, this is happening in the class, time's being wasted, I can't go to the bathroom because of the vaping, etc., etc. She's being kind. She could probably write an entire book about her public school experience for the first time ever as a sophomore or junior in high school over the course of just a few months. But the fact, again, that she showed up to public school as an experiment should prove to everybody that endless people don't attend public school who have a brain in their skull, because they don't need to. It's unfortunate, I think, and I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. I think it's remarkably unfortunate that people go to school for all of the wrong reasons. It's my opinion, but I just believe that that's unfortunate. If they spent time reading, writing, thinking, if they spent time in solitude, if they spent time, again, outside, not constrained by the system the way that it is designed, 8 hours a day, all day long, waking up early, getting on a bus or being driven to school, XYZ, sitting next to people you don't know or care about that you'll never see ever again after you graduate from high school. Most of which, of course, you'll never even talk to, and your relationships consistently change. All for what? You have a student here who's using that brainwashing system as an experiment. And they said, no thanks, this place sucks. And they left. That means that that person is a leader. That means that that person is smarter and more advanced than the people who are still stuck in the matrix who keep going. And this is not a singular case. I taught, again, recollection here, I taught at least 2 to 3 students who openly told me when I taught that they were homeschooled. They showed up to my class. They were excited to be there. And then they said, but our parents have always told us that we have the ability to come back and homeschool ourselves and teach ourselves at home if we don't want to come here anymore. And I remember looking at both of them. They were separate ages. One was in 6th grade, and then one was in 8th grade. And I told them both, I said, well, when you leave, and I said when you leave, and I didn't say if, I said when. I said, when you leave, I'll miss you because you're fantastic students and you have your heads on straight and you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going and you're self-directed. And that's the way that it should be. And I wish that more people asked you more questions about how it is that you teach yourself at home and what particular curriculums you use and what you do online and where you go and XYZ. I mean, these were advanced students. And I don't say advanced in the way that people would think, like as far as the K-12 system is concerned. It wasn't advanced as far as that system is concerned. It's advanced as far as they did not live in the matrix. They were in control of their lives, not government. Their families gave them real guidance about what to do, where to go, and they sat and talked about it as a family and thought about it as a family, rather than, again, people living in this malaise, getting up, going to school, coming home, do you have homework, and all this other stuff, and then all the daily questions, how was your day? Fine. Did you learn anything? Not really. And then they go back to school again and do the whole thing all over again. These are individuals, again, that would start their own businesses once they leave high school, graduate from college in 2 years. Probably do it online, because why go to a brick and mortar university? What's the point? There are people that have figured it out. There are children who have figured this out, so much so that some of them actually attend public school for a little while as a choice, as a joke. That's pretty damning when it comes to the public school system, is it not? The public school system is a joke, and it's an experiment, and it's one that sucks, that fails. That's it. This student openly admits this is not the society nor the people I want to be around. I don't want to be around people who have a hard time turning on a computer. I don't want to be around people who waste time. And by the way, I want to have the freedom to go to the bathroom whenever the hell I want and not be surrounded by smoke when I do so. That's a good thing. And the two students, by the way, just in summary, that I taught, who again were homeschooled, it was at least two of them. It didn't take them very long either. They stuck around for, I would say, one of them stuck around for about a semester, and then the other one stuck around, the one who was in 8th grade stuck around for about a year. They left 8th grade, graduated quote-unquote middle school, and then they went into 9th grade, and they started 9th grade in about, I'd say, 1 to 2 months into 9th grade. They said, nope, I'm done. And then they left. And that was the end of that. They went to a private school for a little while, which was smaller classes. It was a little more work, but it was smaller classes, shorter day. And then they ended up leaving that. And then they just taught themselves, and that was the end of it. So I don't know where they are now. I hope they're both fine. I would have to assume that they are. They came from great families. They were bright people. And there you go. And I applaud this individual, this Algebra 2 female student. Good for them. That's absolutely fantastic. Now, there's also this. This is a post from a listener of the show, Marion, California. NorCal. Thank you for sending this as well. Love your responses. Read all of them. And they said the following here regarding one of my last episodes. They said, everything you said about the California schools is true, but it's worse and has been going on longer. Years ago, they passed a law dubbed the Harvey Milk Law after that notorious pedophile. It requires every school K through 12 to teach positive and affirming information about LGBT, including books. During Pride Week, quote unquote, all the schools K through 12 display pride flags on the flagpole and teach propaganda about this valiant and noble population. They said what's worse is so many of the parents think it's great and are fully on board with children changing their gender on a daily basis. A mom I spoke to got a gleam in her eye, talking about her preschool, asking children each day about their gender. I think a lot of these parents actually hate their children and are sadistic. You can't love your child and subject your child to this every day while the poor kids are trapped in their before school program, their school classes, and then their after school program. It's not just the schools, it's the medical system, the mental health system, and all the rest, unquote. 100%. It's everywhere. And you'll notice, as it's been covered, of course, on the show, and you've seen it yourself, and you're well versed in this without even me saying it, the molding, or melding, I should say, of all of those systems into one. The mental health profession, quote unquote, the medical profession, and the education system. They're all collapsing, which means the thing that has to happen is they have to circle the wagons. So now, you're seeing all three of those systems around one another, holding one another up for dear life, in quicksand. So much so, again, that you have medical facilities inside of American K-12 schools. There's a school here in our county that I've actually been to and seen, and it has a premier health medical system and medical offices inside of the actual school itself. And it's a regular public K-12 high school. It's astounding. That's never happened before. Which means, again, you know that they are promoting all of the shot taking and the simple fact that they are there and that they, of course, deem it as probably being a convenience. And look, it's right here. We're right here. You can just walk on in and get your shot, no problem, and then head back to class and pass out from a heart attack and everything else. They, again, view it as being a convenience, not knowing that it's a purposeful placement of a corrupt system within another, so that they can piggyback on one another's ideologies and be tools for the government. It's disgusting, but it's all designed, again, to crush these people. to make people sick, to make them ill, and to make them dependent. Now, there's one more story here from a K-12 level before I get into some higher ed stories, which again are equally as interesting and equally as disturbing. But this was tossed my way, and this was from the local 12 Cincinnati news outlet. And here's what it said. It was titled, this was from this week, Ohio choir teacher known for mentoring The Voice champions, that television show, forced to retire. Wonder why? I'll let you take a guess. Choir teacher forced to retire. If you said something sexual related, well, you win a prize. Pettisville, if I'm saying that right, Pettisville, Ohio, an Ohio choir teacher known for mentoring The Voice, quote-unquote, champions, a girl named Tom, quote-unquote, has been forced to retire after he allegedly made inappropriate communications with students. According to WKYC, Dwayne Beck, a choir teacher at Pettisville High School in Pettisville, Ohio, who once received praise for mentoring girl named Tom, quote-unquote, has been forced to retire after an investigation into possible inappropriate communications with students. Per WKYC's report, Beck, who joined the Pettisville district in 1998, came into the national spotlight in 2022 when siblings Becca, Caleb, and Joshua Lecty of Girl Named Tom credited him after winning season 21 of The Voice. The group went on to present Beck with their trophy during a hometown celebration per the station's report. According to the outlet, Principal Adam Wagner received a voicemail from a student on September 23rd who said they had witnessed concerning behavior from a teacher. After contacting the student alongside Superintendent Josh Clark, Principal Wagner was informed by the student that Beck had allegedly been giving massages to students and had asked a male student if he had a girlfriend before reassuring him that it was, quote, okay to be gay, per the report. The investigation was expanded and multiple students and parents were interviewed, according to WKYC. Now that, of course, would be a Title IX investigation. You would hope, anyway. But maybe not. Maybe the school just kept it in-house, which that happens too. School districts sometimes, unfortunately, little digression, is they won't even offer a Title IX investigation during an actual Title IX violation. They won't even let parents know that one exists because parents are naive about the process and they don't know how it actually works. They don't know what their rights are. The article goes on, it says officials said that the inquiry, quote, to the best of the administration's knowledge, produced no evidence of inappropriate touching or relationships between the teacher and or the students, unquote, but found that some students were uncomfortable with Beck's hugs and referenced a previous incident in which Beck was reprimanded for touching a student's stomach while demonstrating a breathing exercise, according to the outlet's report. The station reported that some students also told officials that Beck friended or attempted to friend them on social media platforms, Instagram and Snapchat. Inappropriate. It says the report reviewed by WKYC shows dozens of text exchanges between Beck and several students, with many being routine, choir, or event-related in nature. It says one set of messages, however, revealed a lengthy texting relationship with a boy that began when he was in 7th grade, according to the station. When speaking with investigators, the student said that he got in trouble at school often and came to see Beck as a trusted adult who sometimes showed up at his home unannounced, per the outlet. Inappropriate. He just cares about him, Sean. Leave him alone. He just cares about the well-being of a minor who maybe comes from a broken home, and he's just looking out for his best interests and blah, blah, blah. Maybe he just wants to give him a tug job. Maybe that's it. Don't look too deep into it. Maybe he's just a pedophile. Of course, if they're high school students, it wouldn't be a pedophile. Maybe he's just a predator. According to the station's report, it says, Beck and the student had these exchanges. Bullet points. Lots of them. Invited the student to lunch or dinner. Inappropriate. Wow. Told the student they should, quote, get together often, unquote, after learning that he would be homeschooled. Inappropriate. Talked about crazy, quote, crazy things you can do with guys and not be gay, unquote. Inappropriate. Told the boy, quote, I like the way you say it, unquote, after the student called him a dwick, unquote, unquote, in a voice message. Inappropriate. Offered the boy rides home from the movies. Inappropriate. Told the boy he would text him around 3 or 4 a.m. after he returned from a trip to Florida. Inappropriate. That's called sexual grooming. All of that is called sexual grooming. This is the education that those studying in teacher education programs never receive. This is the education and knowledge that school teachers don't have, nor do many administrators. When was the last time they received professional development on sexual grooming? And as I've proven with my own research, formally, in grad school, does that professional development exist? And if so, does it work? Answer, no. And if it does exist, does it work? No, it doesn't. It's actually counterproductive. It makes things worse. It causes people, again, to fear loss of their job for reporting such things because there's retaliation. It's disgusting. This is the business. It wraps up here. It says WKYC reported that Beck will use all accrued sick time and retire on May 31st. A separate agreement reviewed by the outlet shows that he has been barred from school property without direct permission from the superintendent's permission. He should be fired. The problem is they're letting him retire so he can keep his pension. And therein lies the problem. It's sexual grooming at face value, which means he lawyered up. And his lawyer fought for his pension and said, look, he's out of the business. You can take his license. Just give him his pension. And the state of Ohio probably again allowed that to take place. It's disgusting. The Pettisville Board of Education approved the agreement on November 5th, and Beck had been on administrative leave since the investigation was launched on September 23rd, per the outlet. Superintendent Josh Clark issued the following statement on the matter to WKYC, quote, the Pettisville Local School District Board of Education's administration received a complaint from a student regarding a teacher. The complaint concerned a lack of professional boundaries between the teacher and students. The board thoroughly investigated the matter and reported the complaint and additional student complaints made over the course of the investigation to local law enforcement. The investigation revealed inappropriate communications and a lack of maintenance of professional boundaries with students. The investigation, to the best of the administration's knowledge, produced no evidence of inappropriate touching or relationships between the teacher and or the students, unquote. Well, that's not true, is it? My God. The student openly admitted it. And then the board and the superintendent are openly saying that all those bullet points that I just read and said inappropriate at the end of all of them was not inappropriate. Again, this is the business. It will protect itself at all costs at your expense. I don't know what else to say exactly. But there is this. And I want to read this, and I want to take my time with this. It's not long. It's just very well written. Now, I don't know who wrote this. This is on an anonymous chat board that I frequent with regularity and have for years. And I have no proof that this was actually written by a university CEO, so to speak, but this is well done. It could be AI. Again, it's anonymous. I have no idea. But this is one of the best well-written summaries of higher education that I have ever read in my entire life. And I have to tell you, that's saying something, because I can't write it this well. I can rant and rave about it. I can make, I think, pretty decent points. But this right here is perfect. This is higher education, so to speak, in a nutshell, in America. Here's what they said. It was titled, University CEO Explains How Colleges Work. Quote, "You speak of education, a charming, antiquated notion. We are not educators. We are architects of a perfectly sustainable ecosystem. Our campus is not a place of learning. It is a processing plant for human capital. We identify the resource, youth, bloated with anxiety and ambition. We feed that anxiety through our marketing, a precise algorithm of lack. Then we present the solution, a 4-year conditioning program. We don't teach them to think. We teach them to consume. They consume curriculum, they consume debt, and most importantly, they consume an identity, our brand. The loan documents are not financial instruments. They are covenants. They are legal, binding ritual where a soul is tethered to an institution in perpetuity. We are not just selling them a future, we are owning a percentage of it. Each payment they make for the next 20 years is a tribute to our system, a quiet affirmation of their dependence. The dropouts, the broken, they are not tragedies. They are a necessary byproduct of the refining process. You cannot purify a resource without waste. Their failure serves as a powerful lesson to the others. Comply, consume, and you too can avoid the scrap heap. Their shattered dreams are the fertilizer of our pristine quad lawns. We are not building minds. We are not building a loyal, indebted class. We hollow them out just enough to fill the space with our branding, and then when we release them into the world as our permanent agents, they will defend the value of their expensive hollowing until the day they die, because to admit it was worthless is to stare into the abyss. This isn't business. It is alchemy. We transmute hope and fear into a guaranteed long-term revenue stream, and the beautiful, sinister truth is they line up and beg for the transformation." Unquote. I can't say it any better than that. It's the most concise and direct explanation of the entire university and college system. No doubt about it. Case in point, of course, there are endless examples. This was from the Hal Turner radio show just the other day, written by Hal Turner. It was titled, quote, 13% of incoming college freshmen cannot do math at even a first grade level. The University of California at San Diego has released a new report documenting a steep decline in the academic preparedness of its freshmen. The number of entering students needing remedial math has exploded from 1 out of 100 to 1 out of 8. It's so bad that a full 13% of incoming students cannot do math at even the first grade level. They've had to create a second remedial class covering elementary and middle school math skills in addition to the one covering gaps from high school. The report also shows that nearly 1/5 of students fail to meet entry-level writing requirements. The report focuses on the decline of math skills in particular. The University of California at San Diego recently tested a group of their students. Here are the percentages of students who correctly answered questions at each grade level. The chart above showing 87% of incoming freshmen can do grade 1 math is talking about first grade. You know, the grade immediately after kindergarten. Yes, you read that right. If 87% can do first grade math, that means a full 13% cannot do even first grade math. Worse, the chart also proves that only 19% of these incoming freshmen can do math at an 8th grade level. This means that a full 81% of them cannot do 8th grade math. These are incoming college freshmen the report is talking about. And it goes on, talking about remedial math. In the year 2016, the situation was so worrisome that UCSD created a remedial math class for incoming freshmen. Math 2, quote unquote, was designed in 2016 to remediate missing high school math knowledge, it says, quote unquote. But when they did that, they found that most students had knowledge gaps that went back much further to middle school and even elementary school. To address the large number of unprepared students, the mathematics department redesigned Math 2 for the fall of 2024 to focus entirely on elementary and middle school Common Core math subjects grades 1 through 8, and introduced a new course, Math 3B, quote unquote, so as to cover missing high school Common Core math subjects, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, or Math 1, 2, 3, grades 9 through 11. The chart documents the increasing number of students placed in Remedial Math 2 and Math 3B. The USCD report makes clear the situation is growing worse and putting a strain on UCSD being able to actually accomplish its mission in higher education because so many resources have to go into covering for the failures of prior schools. It says, to be clear, this isn't UCSD's fault, and it looks like the faculty have been doing what they can do to address the issues, but they can't sustain it. The math department and the report's authors deserve a lot of credit for documenting the issues. Now, as one might expect, here's one of many reasons, of course, why that's the case. It's because also when they enter college, they realize, of course, that they can't read, write, comprehend, write long-term papers. And even with these AI systems, they don't necessarily think to ask themselves questions on how to do a particular thing. Like, how do I write this kind of a paper? Say, for example, how do I write a paper in APA format? And then, of course, an AI system would actually show the person. But they're showing up at college and they're receiving not just remedial math education, but they're receiving instruction like this. This was from the Gateway Pundit, and it was titled, Indiana University Boots Woke Lecturer for Labeling MAGA, quote, white supremacy in classroom rant. I wish that there was an actual video on this. That would be absolutely fantastic. But there isn't, apparently. But there is a screenshot of one of the slides that this particular instructor was using. Again, it says Indiana University has yanked a far-left lecturer from her Diversity, Human Rights, and Social Justice course. That should give it away right there. After she branded the MAGA movement as covert white supremacy, quote-unquote, during a class presentation. Now, here's what the slideshow, or at least the slide in the show, basically shows. It's a giant pyramid, and then I'd say the top third of the pyramid, so to speak, is labeled in red as overt white supremacy, socially unacceptable. And it says lynching, hate crimes, swastikas, KKK, burning crosses, the N-word, neo-Nazis, racial slurs, and racist jokes. Well, it's kind of funny. Anyway, it goes on. The bottom 2/3 says covert white supremacy, socially acceptable. Hiring discrimination, police murdering people of color, making America great again, quote unquote, school to prison pipeline, Confederate flags, racial profiling, police brutality, discriminatory lending, not believing experiences of people of color, paternalism, Eurocentric curriculum, assuring that good intentions are enough, I guess, her face is cut off by some of these. English-only initiatives, anti-immigration policies / practices, virtuous victim naming, I think that's what that says, fearing people of color, housing discrimination, self-appointed something, probably whiteness, I don't know, denial of white privilege, expecting people of color to teach white people, believing something, and then don't blame me, I never owned slaves, unquote. You cannot help these people. They're absolutely gone. They're gone. And people, again, parents or whomever, pay these institutions to have people like that, quote unquote, teach their children. Again, I can't think of a larger waste of money. And I understand that there would be people who would even argue and say, well, look, that person's correct and you're crazy, Sean, and whatever else. And then people would also say, to again rationalize it, they would say, well, look, they fired her and good for them, and she doesn't represent the whole. On the contrary, she most certainly represents the whole. That's why she's there in the first place. She's in the right environment. But universities, again, are largely made up of people just like that. And then what do? If they find individuals who are working around them, other faculty members, whatever, who are more conservative-minded, they root those people out too. They gang up on those individuals, they make up lies, they do whatever they do to get rid of them, regardless of how effective they may be, and how well they're preparing their students for the real world and the real working environment and a number of other things. And then before you know it, these institutions are filled with people just like her, but they already are. That description that I read earlier from the anonymous individual, it is a lost profession because it is a profession of enslavement. It is designed to enslave both the instructor and the subject, thereby making them both the subjects of brainwashing. And this is a nice segue right here to my last point, which has to do with this, I hate the word, I really do, initiative. Anytime you hear that word, certainly in the field of education, it's snake oil. That's basically what it is. It is the Hegelian dialectic, where someone and a group, it's never an individual. It is a conglomerate of endless agencies working together with one another to basically, again, sell their wares and claim to have the answer to a problem that the environment itself actually created. Problem, reaction, solution. This has to do with what is called Project Reboot. Project Reboot was put together by individuals affiliated with, both inside and outside, the University of California at Berkeley. So, red flag right out of the gate. What Project Reboot is, without reading directly from their website quite yet, it's a lecture series thrown together again by a younger individual, certainly out of college individual, who goes around to schools and lectures students and staff, apparently, about screen time, cell phone usage, technology usage, etc., etc. And how too much of it, of course, is problematic. Sounds like common sense, because it is. Because only in the Hegelian dialectic could a school environment that adopts technology against their will, floods the entire space with an overabundance of technology use, combined with societal's adoption of technology use and all of the peer pressure that's affiliated with that, to then only create a massive problem where endless issues arise that the environment cannot manage. Do they actually then create their so-called solution, which again is really just a lecture series sharing common statistics about an overabundance of technology use and how it wastes time? The irony, of course, is that they're delivering this instruction and this lecture series in American K-12 public schools, specifically high school environments. So again, the very environment that adopted all of this technology created the problems that they've all had for the last 20 some odd years is now inviting in a speaker to show some statistics, tell a few stories, and say, hey, we want you to rethink the way that you use your cell phone and rethink about how often you use your cell phone, and you will find that you will be a healthier person as a result. Only the brainwashed would believe such a thing within such an environment. Because this lecturer, this guy, who you'll hear from in just a minute, there is no way that he's going to criticize the school environment itself as being the purposeful problem. Because they always were the purposeful problem. I've read the documentation here on the show. It exists on my website under the Government Documents tab. You can go through all of that documentation, the ones pertaining to technology and education, even declassified from the CIA, that the business of throwing technology into the education system was done to force individuals into the working environment to again be more in tune, so to speak, with technology that's being used within the corporate world, within their own school environments, thereby making the transition from K-12 school to college to the corporate world a more smooth transition, basically, a seamless transition. They don't give a damn about the mental and emotional health of anybody. And frankly, neither does this particular lecture series, because he's still lecturing in the same environments that allow it in the first place 8 hours a day, with all of their Chromebooks and all of the other technology that they have to be surrounded by, surveillance systems, swiping cards here and there, bathroom passes that require you swiping a particular credit card that hangs around your neck all day long. It's ridiculous. But what he, again, is not going to do is criticize the actual environment while giving a lecture in that environment as being the reason why all of this technology exists in the first place. So it's a giant ruse. The whole lecture series thing regarding subjects like this, it happens all of the time in the business of education. Somebody comes up with a shiny new rock, and then all of a sudden they show up and they say, we have the thing that will cure what ails you. But they never get down to the root cause, because if they did, they wouldn't be allowed into the school environment. Why do you think I never got invited into the K-12 school environment to talk about any of my books, even though I offered up my services? It's because the school environment is to blame. Now, I have been fortunate enough to have schools and entire staff read my books, specifically the book titled Violence Among Students and School Staff, Understanding and Preventing the Causes of School Violence, which points the finger directly at the school environment as being the problem, the people who work within as being the problem, the structure and architecture of the entire system, from government, from cradle to grave, as being the problem. I don't talk about school shootings, quote unquote, in that book at all, because that's not the problem. The problem is what is in between the ears of the people within these environments, and then the structure of the environment in the first place, and then the history of that structure and why it was built the way that it was built. But Project Reboot is a waste of time and a waste of money. And schools dish out copious amounts of cash to have this guy show up and lecture to them. I want you to hear his voice here momentarily. Again, it sounds nice, but it's far more insidious because it's just a money-making scheme. It's a grift. Students might pick up a couple of things, but then they'll go right back into the meat grinder the very next day and be told, okay, get out your Chromebooks. And then everybody goes, And then in Ohio, they say, put your cell phones away, because now all of a sudden we care about you because the state told us to, because it's law now that you have to have your cell phones put away. No more cell phones. But get out your Chromebooks. See what I mean? put the gun away, but get out your knives. It's ridiculous. So here's the lecturer from this lecture series. Give him a listen. It's about 4 minutes long in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Dino Ambrosi. I'm a digital wellness speaker that talks to middle school and high school students about building a healthy relationship with their phone. Today in the United States, the average 13 to 18-year-old is currently on pace to spend 93% of their remaining free time looking at a screen. Imagine getting to the age of 90 and thinking about all the things you could have done with that time that you didn't because you got distracted.
I really appreciated the perspective of the hours that you have left.
That's shocking every time I see it, and it's pretty scary.
I like how Dino is speaking from a place of experience.
Hearing from someone that's not so much older than us, I think has a lot of impact.
Doesn't feel like an older person's teaching us a lecture.
The transition into college was a lot more difficult than I anticipated. My first midterm rolled around and I got a 20%. In hindsight, that was a really good opportunity for me to grow as a student and a person. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to overcome those feelings of stress and anxiety because I developed the habit of running away from them by turning to the phone in my pocket. I developed an addiction to my phone and to social media. Your actions are the evidence upon which your identity is built. And after a few months of college, I was just objectively none of the things that I was proud to be in high school anymore. And I didn't like the version of myself that I was becoming. And that put me in a state of really poor mental health that made those first couple years of college probably the most difficult of my whole life. And it really all stemmed from the relationship that I built up with my phone.
We have a hard time talking to the kids in ways that speak with them and without being judgmental about it. And Dino can do that in an engaging way.
He's engaging, thoughtful. The presentation I thought was something that students could relate to.
So when I got back to Berkeley, I created a semester-length course called Becoming Tech Intentional. And one of the questions on the application was describe your current relationship with your phone. I had one student say, I'm stuck in this negative feedback loop. I hate it so much, but sometimes it feels like I'm in too deep to break it. I'm currently losing the war for control over my life. Okay, guys, those are real UC Berkeley students that are saying that. I certainly did not expect to see responses like that on the application. Because when I was struggling with this, I genuinely thought I was the only one that had this problem. And I totally blamed myself. I thought that my inability to maintain a healthy level of screen time was a result of my personal shortcomings. And all of my students felt the same exact way. So if you're struggling with this right now, please understand it is not your fault. Behind that screen is a supercomputer and thousands of engineers that are all working to figure out what piece of content is going to keep you on the app for the longest amount of time. These services are free because they're monetizing you. And it's not that you shouldn't use them. You just need to figure out what it means for you to get a good deal out of them. You are not resigned to this outcome. My average student in that course at Berkeley reduced their screen time by over 50%. I had a number of students get 4.0s for the first time while they took the class at Berkeley. So it really is possible to build and maintain a healthy relationship with your phone. And the benefits of doing so are truly, truly enormous, especially post-high school.
This is a great project for keeping that in mind and also creating balance in their lives.
There's a lot that you can do to set yourself up for success so that your phone is not infringing upon your life. Go into your settings and come up with time limits for each of the main social media apps. You can have a friend set a screen time passcode that will not let you bypass that amount of time.
I think every high school student needs to hear this.
The reaction it brings out of me is so deeply emotional. It's like, wake up.
Digital wellness speaker. Again, if there's a gap that can be filled purposefully, then that, of course, would be it. And that would be the title that a person would give themselves. Again, people would say I'm looking into this too much. I'm not. I'm telling you. I can see through this, which is why I'm mentioning this and bringing this up. This has CIA written all over it. Again, it's being used to distract minors into believing that the school environment is not responsible. That this is the work solely of engineers, quote unquote. Very interesting terminology there. Mental engineering, social engineering, things of that nature. But that it's just about companies and tech companies and the people who create these products, and they know what they're doing to get these minors, of course, addicted to their devices and XYZ. All of that's true. None of that is a lie. That's all real. But the school environment is utilizing a lecture like that and statistics like that to deflect from their own involvement, thereby attempting to keep these minors within this environment, not knowing that if the minors left the K-12 environment or the college environment as people know of it, as a brick and mortar system, 8 hours a day, multiple days a week, blah, 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 that if they got away from that, their screen time would not reduce by just 50%. Their screen time would probably be reduced by at least 80%. It would be massive. A homeschooling, home learning child is probably only online for maybe a couple hours a day, tops. And that depends on, of course, what they're looking at. Now, I would also agree with any messaging that he may or may not give within his lecture series, where he openly says things like, you have to reprioritize what you're looking at when you're online. When you're on your device, what are you actually doing? I would, of course, advocate for looking at the truth, trying to figure out what the truth is. Use social media and use online chat boards and use news outlets as a constant qualitative reasoning and analysis experiment to figure out where the inconsistencies are, where the consistencies are, who's telling the truth, who's not, and where does the truth really lie? And can I find my way to those sites and those conversations that exist deep in the deep recesses of the internet? That's worth it. That's worthy screen time. But scrolling through short videos of people, doing things with their cats, I mean, that's not worth it. That's hypnosis. Which again is why that's created. Because as I've said on the show, and as you're well aware, the enemy's currency is our time. And the more time we waste, the more power the enemy gets. Because we aren't doing the things that we could be doing to learn what the truth is and then apply it in our local areas or our own lives, and of course, nationally and then globally in XYZ. It's all designed, again, to steal your time. But again, for such a presentation to happen within the very environment that is created by government to do that, to actually steal your time, which is what the K-12 school environment does. The irony is palpable. It's exhausting. Because if he showed up and he goes, hey, school environments suck. And if you really want to get off of your screen time and you really want to stop being hypnotized, unenroll from this school district right now. Go home, get on your device, look up homeschooling curriculums, find one that's accredited, and go for it. And then you'll never have to come back here. That school will grab him by the back of the shirt and throw him out the side door faster than he can possibly imagine. So he has to show up, make it sound like it's a giant mental and emotional health problem that exists, that's out of the control of everybody, but you can start to take control back and don't blame the school environment because it's not their fault either. Bullshit. It is their fault. They were involved. It was a purposeful takedown. It was a purposeful hypnosis of an entire generation of people. Again, from the early 2000s, right through texting, right through video taking, of course, being able to send video, being able to send audio, the invention of the internet onto cell phones. And then social media applications and other applications, right up until what, of course, right now, everybody uses cell phones for, by and large. So to have some program like this just show up and go from school to school to school, primarily again in California, but of course reach out to endless other schools that are interested in brainwashing individuals, like the local school district in the town where I live. They've reached out to these people because they want to make it look like they're not the bad guys, like they didn't do anything wrong. Well, yeah, they did. But instead of taking responsibility for their own action, they just bring in a cleaner to show up and basically rewire everybody's brain. Like in the movie Men in Black, stare into the light and then bing, and then it wipes their memory clean of the school environment being at fault for anything. They're to blame. They're a part of the problem. Yes, government. Yes, society. Yes, commercials. Yes, TV, etc., etc. The Aura Ring, for God's sakes. People wearing that and looking at their cell phone to see what the ring told them about their sleep patterns. You've got to be kidding me. All the health device wearable crap that's tied to their phones. You can't escape it. I mean, you can, because I don't participate. But again, it's very hard for a lot of people because they're getting it from multiple angles. Again, I'm not saying that the message is bad or necessarily inaccurate. I'm saying it's a drop in the bucket compared to the much bigger problem. And it's a short-term distraction from who's really responsible, which is the American K-12 environment, and of course, society as a whole. You have to have the latest piece of technology. Look at this commercial. We'll give you a phone deal. What do you mean you don't have this kind of cell phone? What do you mean you don't have this app on your phone? And blah, blah, blah. That's the currency draining. That's the time draining. That's the energy draining that they're always trying to do. That's why they can't have me show up and give a lecture, because that's what I would tell them. I would say, unenroll, go home, turn your cell phone off, and then learn how to use it appropriately. Get on these websites. Get an X account. Get a Gab account. Get on Telegram. Follow these Telegram channels. GreatAwakening.win. Vote. Poll. A number of other sites. Another, a boatload of other anonymous chat boards. Godlike Productions is another chat board. Same thing. That's what I would be telling them. And they'd be like, what are those? I've never heard of any of those. And then you'd go, exactly. Therein lies the problem. So, yeah, these grifts exist all of the time. And Project Reboot, in one of my, I would just say my personal opinion, is one of those grifts. It's a short-term Band-Aid on a much larger problem. And as soon as he's gone out of that building, yeah, he might change a couple of minds, but the machine is too tough. It has too much of a stranglehold on endless people, including the American K-12 system, and they're never going to give that up. Even if the state law says no more student cell phones, won't matter. The American K-12 school system will double down on their technology use in another way. They didn't get rid of cell phones because of student mental health. They got rid of cell phones because students were learning the truth about the real world we live in. They were challenging their teachers with what the real truth was. Case in point, I played it in the last war video, put it on my social media accounts as well, and I'll end with this. It was a video that a student was taking of a female student in a university or college classroom, clearly a lecture hall, appeared to be a chemistry class. And she is tearing, and she's white, and she's tearing into her black Latino college professor, who apparently has a PhD in chemistry. And what he's doing on the screen is he's showing a chart of the average scores of the students in his class, either from semester to semester or term to term or whatever it is. And then she challenges him and she openly says, hey, wait a minute. I'm looking at the computer here. I'm on Rate My Professor. No one likes you. No one wants to take your class ever again after they've taken it. They have nothing nice to say about you. And the chart that you're showing is showing a decline in test scores. She goes, I have a 4.0 GPA and I'm getting B's and C's in your class. She says, so your chart is basically showing how bad of a professor you are. And then she says, my question is, how did you get a PhD in chemistry? And then he yells at her. And then she stands up and goes, I'm not taking this. I'm leaving. I'm dropping this class. And then he goes, get the F out. I don't care what you effing think. And then that's the end of the clip. That right there is exactly why they got rid of cell phones in American K-12 schools, by and large. Because they don't want the teacher being challenged. They don't want even illegality to be recorded by minors within these environments and then posted all over the evening news and social media. That's the real reason. But Project Reboot wants you to believe that it's all about addiction, that it's a giant screen time addiction problem. I'm not denying that that is a problem. Just ask yourself who perpetuated the problem in the first place and why. And I think we have the answer to that, and I think we know. Ladies and gentlemen, I've ranted enough. Thank you for listening as always. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you on Monday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.